All right, so today we're going to unpack this massive modern struggle for meaning. And we're going to do it by imagining a kind of round table, a clash of ideas from some really, really big thinkers. Ideas about faith, conscience, and what it even means to be human.
This whole conversation really kicks off with the idea that these ancient stories, they're not just some dusty old books for history class. Not at all. People are looking at them again with this almost brutal honesty. Because, well, they seem to describe these patterns of human behavior, our screw-ups and our moments of redemption, with this chilling accuracy. It's like they're not just stories, they're mirrors. And that really gets us to the heart of the problem today. The central argument here is that so many of us are in this crisis of meaning. We're desperately looking for something, anything, to organize our lives around. And here's the kicker. When we can't find a noble goal to aim for, our default setting, it often just clicks over to resentment. This whole explainer is really about finding a way out of that trap.
So the big idea, the central metaphor for this whole thing, is wrestling with God. But, and this is important, it's not being framed as some niche religious thing. No, it's being presented as maybe the most honest way to describe the human condition itself. That moment we all have, that inevitable collision with a reality that just won't bend to what we want.
Okay, but let's be honest. Wrestling with God sounds pretty abstract, right? So what are we actually wrestling with when we say that? What does that feel like? Well, the thinkers in this conversation, they actually break it down into a few really distinct experiences we all face.
So they say this struggle kind of has three distinct voices. First up, there's the voice of suffering. This is just the cold, hard fact that the world can be a tragic, unfair place. Then you've got the sharp voice of your conscience. Jordan Peterson has a great way of putting it. It's the part of you that refuses to flatter you. It's that inner voice that calls you out. And finally, there's the voice of God, which is framed as a real encounter, something relational. As Bishop Barron points out, it feels less like you're talking to yourself and more like a genuine, back-and-forth dialogue that can actually change you.
But, and this is so important, this wrestling has a dark side, a really dark side. Viktor Frankl nails it when he says that suffering doesn't automatically make you a better person. It can be twisted, weaponized. The story of Cain is presented as the perfect example of this. He's the guy who feels wronged by life itself, and he takes that pain and turns it into permission to destroy. It becomes an indictment of existence itself. And this is the fork in the road. It perfectly lays out the two ways this can go. On one path, you have the noble wrestler, the Jacob path. This person asks, okay, given all this pain, how should I live? They aim up, they're humbled by the experience, and it leads to taking on more responsibility, even if they get hurt in the process. But then there's the other path, the destructive, resentful Cain path. That person asks a totally different question. Whom can I punish for this? It aims at an enemy, it's full of entitlement, and it leads straight to scapegoating and revenge. Okay, this brings us to the next and maybe even deeper level of the debate. It really gets to the core of everything. We've talked about the feeling, the experience of wrestling. But what is it exactly that we're wrestling with? And the whole thing really boils down to this one massive question. Is God a real, living, external reality that confronts you and calls you to account? Or is God a psychological symbol, the highest organizing principle inside your own mind? And make no mistake, how you answer that question, it changes everything about how you live your life. Well, from a psychological angle, Carl Jung's perspective is fascinating. He basically says whether God is real or not, you have to take the God image, your highest conceivable value, deadly seriously. Because if you treat that ultimate value like it's negotiable, your personality starts to fall apart. You become fragmented, a mess of contradictions and compulsions. But if you truly serve it, it forces you to become a more whole, more truthful person. Then René Girard comes in and adds this really critical social layer. He argues that a living God, one who reveals truths we don't want to hear, is a direct threat to our ugliest social habits, like scapegoating. But a simple psychological principle? Oh, that can be tamed. You can make it polite, make it safe, and ultimately, it's completely powerless when the mob gets going. And Jordan Peterson brings it all back to a super practical rubber-meets-the-road distinction. He says, look, if God is just a principle in your head, then you are the ultimate judge. You're in charge. You can edit it, tweak it, ignore it. But if God is a living reality, the whole game is flipped. You're not the one negotiating. You're the one being called, held accountable by something bigger than you. So what's fascinating is that a kind of consensus emerges from all this. It's that we humans, we're just wired to worship. We're always going to put something at the very top of our value structure. And if a transcendent God fades away from that top spot, the vacuum that's left, well, it isn't filled with calm, rational thinking. No way. It gets filled with substitute gods, political ideologies, our tribal identities. And believe me, they demand their own sacrifices. Okay, so this is all great, high-level stuff. But how does it actually play out on the ground? How do these big, abstract ideas about God and symbols and wrestling connect to the real, messy, knockdown, drag-out fights we see in our culture every single day?
Yeah, that's the real question, isn't it? Why are these ancient stories so incredibly potent right now? Why is it that when you bring them into the modern arena, they act like one of two things? Either gasoline poured on a fire, or powerful medicine that could actually heal us?
Well, the discussion points to a few key reasons. In our crazy, hyper-partisan world, everything becomes a weapon, right? So these powerful stories, they get turned into tribal badges. They're used to prop up our own side's power instead of challenging our own flaws. And all of this is happening because we have this deep, deep anxiety that we've totally lost the plot, that we don't have a shared story anymore. And this all leads to a really powerful summary, a synthesis from Jonathan Haidt. He says a story becomes gasoline the moment you use it to sanctify your own tribe, to prove you're the good guys and they're the bad guys. But it becomes medicine when you use it for what it was actually meant for, to force you to look in the mirror, to demand personal truth, to stop you from blaming everyone else, and to remember that you, too, can get it wrong. So where does all this leave us? Well, it brings a whole conversation right back home. We're moving away from grand theories of theology and politics and into the most personal arena there is, the individual human heart. Because ultimately, this struggle is framed as a deeply personal and incredibly urgent choice. And here is maybe the most important message from the entire dialogue. The real battle line, the one between order and chaos, isn't out there between different political parties or rival tribes. Nope. The real line runs straight through every single one of us. It runs through your heart and through my heart. It's about our own individual willingness to be honest and to take responsibility. So what can you actually do? The discussion doesn't just leave us hanging. It offers a pretty clear three-step path forward. First, aim high. Point yourself at the highest good you can possibly conceive of, not at destroying your enemy. Second, speak the truth. Tell the truth about what you see, especially when it's hard. And third, and maybe this is the hardest one, stop scapegoating. Take responsibility for your own stuff and refuse that easy, seductive option of just blaming someone else. And really, this is what it all boils down to. This is the fundamental choice, the conflict that's playing out inside every one of us. Are you going to choose the path of resentment, lies, and defining yourself as a victim? Or are you going to choose responsibility, truth, and the idea that making a sacrifice can actually lead to something better, to a kind of redemption? And so we're left with this final, really powerful thought. This whole struggle for meaning, it's not supposed to be easy. If you actually do it, if you engage with it honestly and really wrestle with these things, you might not come out of it perfectly fine. You might even, like Jacob, walk away with a limp. But you'll be marked by something so much better than bitterness or resentment. You'll be marked by the truth.